One of the great sounds for football fans everywhere. It is finally here, the 2023 NFL Draft, and who better on draft day to spend a little bit of time with us but one of our good friends joins us all throughout the football season, covering the Detroit Lions for all Lions. Our good buddy Logan Lamorandier. Find him on Twitter if you're not following him already. What are you doing with your life at L Lamorandier? Logan, my friend, first and foremost, happy draft day to you, partner. How are you? How's life? How are things?
Yes, happy draft day. My favorite day of the year, and this year is a little bit different than most other years in the past. You know, the Lions got a lot to play for this upcoming season, and for so many years, I felt like this day was always just a highlight of the season. And yes, it's definitely still a ton of fun, but I think there's a ton to look forward to next season as well and down the line. So it's just a good day. It's nice to have some football, some actual like NFL real news, not just a bunch of rumors and what's going to happen, what could potentially happen. It's actually happening tonight.
Yeah, and it's good that like Aaron Rodgers made his decision and they got that deal done before the draft so they could exchange the picks, but also so that news can get buried away and we don't have to hear about him anymore. From the Green Bay Packers to Gang Green, good luck out there to him. I don't really mean that. Horrible luck to him. I hope they have a dismal season and it all goes to hell in a handbasket. But that's neither here nor there because this is like actual football. And you mentioned something, how it's a little bit different. So let me phrase what do I want to say? Paint this picture this way. Do the Lions, because of the success that they had last season, do you feel like there's more pressure to get this draft right because they know how close they were last year? Or do you feel like there's not as much pressure maybe in years previous because they have a good enough roster that they might be able to win one or two more games next year than they did this previous year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never actually even thought about, but there's always a lot of pressure. I would say every year, because if a GM wants to keep his job, they have to make a draft pick. But relatively, I think there would be less pressure because I don't think there's any, and Brad Holmes hasn't done this. I don't think he's ever really reached for needs, but that pressure to reach for certain positions or that feeling that you have to come away with certain spots on the roster to fill holes isn't really there. And I think that young core is already established in Detroit, and it's obviously only going to get better with the 5 high draft picks the Lions have. So to me, I think there'd be a little less pressure just because you're truly just picking the players you like, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at one position or another. Now, there's obviously needs that aren't as glaring as they have been in years past, and looking at the long-term future, there's a lot of different routes they can go. But to me, it's just if someone slips and it wasn't expecting to be there, you grab the best player available. And that's always kind of been my strategy anyways. But I think even more so this year is you can just grab whoever you want, and it's not going to hurt you this upcoming season. And you have to remember, too, the Lions are getting better. So you're not going to have all these rookies playing a ton. So I keep going back to pick 18. Everyone wants it's a first rounder, and they're saying that you have to have an impact starter there. I'm like, that I don't really feel like that's the case. You look at a lot of these better teams in the later half of the draft, and just because they draft them in the first round doesn't mean they're going to come in right away and just take the league by storm. But truthfully, I just think that would be really nice to have, but it's not so much a necessity as it has been in prior years.
It's so interesting to be picking this far back, right? To have the 18th pick, because that's where they would be sitting had they not made the deal for Matthew Stafford. And then with the Rams tanking the way that they did, that pick at 6, I mean, boy, does that look good. And it is interesting that you bring that up. In that back half of the first round, teams that have made the playoffs, they are kind of adding supplementary guys. Because every time we talk about the draft, I always say your first rounder's got to be your guy that's going to come in there and start and be an impact player day one. But it's a little bit different, as you mentioned, in the back half because you're dealing now with playoff contenders that might have a majority of their roster sort of filled out, and they might have a little bit more leeway with a guy that they want to select there because they know that he doesn't have to come in and start as if you're, choosing in the top, 14 picks of the draft, if you will. Would you like to see in your I don't know, maybe this is just like a wish, but do you hope that they stay at 6, or would you like to see Brad Holmes maybe move back a couple spots if the deal's sweet enough?
I'm always typically for moving down. The only time I ever wouldn't want to move down is again if someone were to slip that you would never expect to be there, like a Will Anderson. I think that's the guy this year. If he's there at 6, I don't think you pass up. But outside of that, pretty much anyone who's still there, I would be fine with trading down as long as you get some decent value. And Brad Holmes, with what he's done with his draft picks, I think the more draft picks, the better for him. So I'd more likely want to move down than I would anything else.
You ran a really good series of polls on the old Twitterverse, and who knows if they're Lions fans or if they're not, because anybody can vote in them. But I really loved the fact that you went, kind of through where you had everybody just you threw out some options. You had everybody voting for it, and I thought it was it's very informative to try to get a gauge of what people are really thinking. Do you think that they go defense with those first two selections in the first round?
Just looking at the value of where each position it's a really odd draft class. I don't think it's a very strong draft class, but there are a couple positions that have a lot of depth and a lot of good players, and one of those is cornerback. So at 18, if they don't select a quarterback at 6, I think there's going to be a really good cornerback available at 18, which is kind of what I'm hoping for, just due to the fact that 6, I think it's a reasonable spot to select a cornerback, but I think you can really get another good one at 18. Whereas offense, though, there's not a lot of wide receivers. I don't think they should be taking a wide receiver at pick 18. Bijan Robinson is interesting if he's still there at 18, and I was totally against drafting a running back in the first round, always have been. But again, going back to this weaker draft class, it's tough for me to pass on Robinson if he's there, because I just don't think there's going to be any other players that would be at nearly as good relative to position as he is. So I do believe if I had to put money on it, that would probably be defense, but nothing is going to necessarily surprise me. Again, going back to you don't have to reach or feel like you have to select defense just because you could improve the most on defense.
One of the things that I've been trying to tell Lions fans is that whomever is on Brad Holmes's list, who's ever on their board and wherever they have them ranked, the news about Jameson Williams that is being suspended for the first 6 games of the season for his gambling, that is not going to affect Brad Holmes's board, in my opinion. I don't think that they're going to reach and try to get wide receiver because they took him off the roster for the first month and a half of the season. I don't believe that. Do you think that they could go wide receiver at 18?
No, and it would be a big surprise. And again, it's just going back to looking at the likely receivers who will be available at 18, and I don't think any of them are necessarily going to be towards the top of my personal big board, and a lot of consensus big boards as well. Just the receiver class outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba, it kind of falls off a cliff after that. And there's a lot of really small, really light receivers. Quentin Johnson, he's a big receiver, but he doesn't play like a big receiver, so he's a bit of a question mark. So, I don't think the Lions need to feel pressure in the first round. Jameson Williams is he's going to be here past this year. It's going to maybe be a tough six-game stretch without him. Marvin Jones, he's going to have to step up, but Josh Reynolds, I think, can do the job too. And the Lions, they're going to probably have to rely on the rushing attack a little bit more, which is should be a strength. So I don't think they need to feel like they have to come away with a receiver just because of the suspension. But they long term, they're still going to need a third receiver, because really it's just looking past this year. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, and not a whole lot after that. And you pretty typically have 3 receivers on the field a lot. So it's almost like you need a third receiver as a starter eventually, but it's not as important this year as it will be probably next year.
The player that you believe the Lions will draft at number 6, the player that you want them to draft at number 6.
Yeah. So I would like to draft Jamin Carter, and I know there's plenty of concern. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man, let's get into it. Come on. I've been waiting for this.
Yeah. So I think the Lions are at a point where to really take their defense to the next level, if they had an elite defensive tackle or just some sort of interior lineman who can get to the quarterback and be disruptive, it's going to help their entire team a ton. It's going to help their pass rush, their edge defenders are going to have more sacks. If the Lions in the lead, you kind of have to build your team almost like in that way where if the Lions do have some leads, the opponents are going to be passing the ball a lot more. So you're going to have more sack opportunities. And I understand the concerns with Jalen Carter, but there's concerns with just about every player that's going to be there at 6. And unfortunately, I don't know Jalen Carter, and I just hear reports and the question marks that he has, and I think they're valid. But from an on-the-field standpoint, it's just you look at what he does, and he's hands down the best football player in this draft. And to be able to get him at 6, you would hope that maybe the Lions culture, this strong culture that they have built, would be able to bring him along and make sure he's doing the right things and to get the most out of him. I just think, yeah, it's obviously I feel a little conflicted about it because you've seen those big defensive tackles that might not have the right mindset and they can be really good when they want to, and then other times taking plays off. So yeah, to me, I just feel like Jalen Carter is the best player in this draft, and you can get him at 6. I think he's worth the risk.
Wow, man. Okay, so that's the guy you want them to take. Who do you think they will take?
I think I just did my latest and final mock draft, and I had him taking Devin Witherspoon, who definitely fits the character I would say the Lions look for. Just as a corner, he's just looking to hit people, and he's not the biggest corner in the world. He doesn't have the best speed, but in terms of his grittiness and his ball hawking ability, it's all there. And so again, it's not like he's a perfect prospect, but I really like what he's done on film, and I think it definitely matches up well with that personality that the Lions look for.
Yeah, and he is he's a violent player. He's a hammer. He's going to come down. He wants to hit people, and he wants to hit them hard, and we like that. So it'll be very interesting. Now, where and if and when do the Lions look at quarterback?
Yeah, so honestly, at 6, the way it's starting to seem like the draft could shake out, where there's going to be one of the top 4 quarterbacks, maybe even 2 potentially, at pick 6. And we've had this debate how many times about drafting a quarterback. And, you're looking at Goff's contract. He still has 2 more years on, a relatively cheap deal. It's not the biggest contract in the world, but I don't think the Lions are going to have an opportunity to draft like another quarterback again. And ever since, this new regime came in, I always said year 3 would be the time I'd be comfortable with taking a quarterback. But Goff definitely changed my perspective a little bit on the necessity of drafting a quarterback. I don't think by any means they have to at 6, but if there's a quarterback there that they really like, and you're going to have that 5 years of a rookie contract as a quarterback, and you're not going to be held at gunpoint by Jared Goff demanding $50 million a year for having some good seasons, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But if Goff's around for 2 years, you're essentially wasting 2 years of that rookie contract as well from the quarterback. So I'm not ruling out at 6, and I'm not even going to say that I'd be upset if they took a quarterback at 6, because I understand long term. But at 6, I would prefer just to have someone who could make a bigger impact more this year, because that's kind of the expectations that are set when you're drafting that high in the draft.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of the thing too. I think a lot of times we get caught up in, we want to look down the road. We want to build towards the future. And then sometimes I feel like there are certain times in certain sports, and obviously it doesn't happen for the Lions because we've been building for the future for how many years, but you realize the NFL window is open and it closes so quickly. And the teams that can figure it out and find that sustained success, I mean, that's the one thing everybody's chasing, right? Everybody wants to get there. Okay, so then I have to ask you about the QBs. Like, who do you think would be at the top of your shopping list? And we'll say that C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young are both off the board. Who's on your list?
Well, that's the interesting thing is I think C.J. Stroud might be there. And so
Ooh,
that's
bad S2 score. I just read about that last night. Bad
yeah.
S2. I'm starting to wonder, you're not a really good S2 score? Brock Purdy, we're talking like top 90th percentile or whatever. Like he was elite, like Drew Brees level. And I'm like, okay, that explains why they won some playoff games.
Yeah, I don't even know what to make of this S2 scores. I mean, they just don't have the long-term data there yet to really support it in my mind. And yeah, you want a smart quarterback, but again, it's not like the Wonderlic test. It's pretty different than what the Wonderlic was. So I think that might be overblown a tad bit. And then I also heard that the scores that were leaked might not even be accurate. So I don't know what to make of that. But C.J. Stroud, to me, I think he could be an upgrade over Jared Goff. I don't know if he does anything elite, but he does have some really good accuracy. And honestly, he's been compared to Jared Goff before, like when Jared Goff is playing well. So again, in my mock draft, I had C.J. Stroud being passed up by the Lions, and that's kind of how I probably think and hope that it'll go. But Anthony Richardson would be my next guy, and that's just because of his traits. I haven't seen anything like it before. I think he has a lower floor, but given his running ability, I think that raises his floor. And in terms of arm talent, he has that, but it's just the whole accuracy thing. And Josh Allen has skewed everyone's expectations for an inaccurate quarterback on that it's just going to be easily fixed, and that doesn't always happen. But Richardson can make all the throws. He can make tight window throws. It's just, it's a big gamble, but it could pay off, or it could bite you in the behind. But so my rankings kind of go that way, where I still have C.J. Stroud and Richardson right next to each other, really, and then Levis I'm just not super high on, and I don't think I would even consider that, and it doesn't sound like the Lions would be either if he's there.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch that one either. He's like this year's Zach Wilson to me. I just don't see or feel what the national pundits do. His name is Logan Lamorandier. He is an X's and Bros pundit here on the Michigan Sports Network. Find his work, all Lions coverage all the time, at Logan Lamorandier, or at L Lamorandier, I should say, on the Twitterverse. Logan, man, it's so great to hear your voice. Thanks so much for spending some time with us this morning, and enjoy tonight's 2023 first round of the NFL Draft.
Oh, thanks for having me. You as well. And I wish we had more time to talk. So many things to talk about.